2 months.
Growth in the communities won't see ICU until 2 weeks, and we're already at full ICU.
Hospitals warn they are stretched and calls grow to protect the most vulnerable. And new research suggests variants are affecting essential workers harder.
Painting the wall for 30 years now. It's a landmark in Toronto, and it's pretty sad to hear that it's coming down.
Artists and scholars speak up against plans to demolish a building that showcases a local landmark.
This is CBC Saturday News.
Good evening, I'm Marivel Tarouk. New COVID-19 cases are up in Ontario with more than 2,400 cases reported today, the highest since January. It's also the third day in a row above 2,000. Concern is growing over the more transmissible COVID variants and over the pace of vaccinations. Lorenda Redicop has more on the calls to protect the vulnerable.
Dale Jacques was a longtime bus driver for Brampton Transit. His union shared online that yesterday he died from COVID-19 after weeks in a coma. He was 61.
He was just an all-around caring individual. He always put his workers and his members first. He was a person that was very well respected and loved by the community that he served.
His daily route connected to the one that went past this Amazon plant, shut down after hundreds of workers there became infected. The union says 9 drivers tested positive in just 4 days. It wants more protection for drivers who come in contact with hundreds of passengers every day.
We're talking about thousands of potential exposures. They're going into war without a bulletproof vest, and that bulletproof vest needs to be that vaccination in the arm.
Dr. Zane Chagla just published new research looking at where the most contagious variants are spreading most.
It's astounding. Like, it is a straight line up, a 50% growth in essential workers.
That's as cases have been rising, along with hospitalizations, with hospitals warning they're stretched.
The growth in the communities won't see ICU until 2 weeks, and we're already at full ICU. And so really that is a really dangerous situation in terms of healthcare capacity over the next few months.
Dr. Chagla wants vaccination policy to target those most affected. That's as Toronto is now moving to vaccinate people 70 and up. It had spots not filled by those 75 and up. Plus, anyone 60 and older can get a shot at a pharmacy. Essential workers still aren't eligible.
We have to go back to isolating the driver, offering them masks, enforcing masks and face coverings for our passengers, and prioritizing transit professionals at the top of the list as those to be vaccinated.
The union worries its drivers might not be up for a vaccine for a couple months and is pushing for it to be sooner. Lorenda Redicop, CBC News, Toronto.
With Ontario hitting a high not seen in more than 2 months, the breakdown by regions shows growth. More than 800 cases in Toronto, just over 400 in Peel region, and more than 260 in York region. Hamilton, Durham, and Ottawa each topping 100 cases today. The province also reported 16 more deaths. And we have more now on the research showing the disproportionate impact of the pandemic on lower income neighborhoods. They're also the areas with the highest number of essential workers. Greg Ross has more from a resident in Toronto's Northwest End who's left with little choice but to keep working.
Samuel Kazitu says he has no choice but to risk contracting COVID-19 every day.
It's worrying, it's depressing. It causes a lot of nervousness.
He lives near Jane and Finch, one of Toronto's hardest hit neighborhoods when it comes to the virus. And he's also been working for a temp agency to make ends meet, taking on various jobs that are considered essential.
What is it that tomorrow has for me, especially as a temporary worker?
The fear is even greater, with the more contagious and deadlier variants representing more than half of the cases being discovered in the province, primarily the B117. First discovered in the United Kingdom. A new unpublished study posted to the website MedArchive suggests that people who live in low-income neighborhoods or work essential jobs are being disproportionately affected by these variants.
When you separate it in Toronto and Peel by neighborhoods with essential workers and you separate it by neighborhoods with income, you see the trends pretty clearly.
Dr. Zane Chagla is a professor of infectious diseases at McMaster University. He's also one of the co-authors of this study, which has yet to be peer-reviewed. He says the growth rate of the variants was nearly 44% in groups at the lowest income level, which is double the nearly 22% growth rate at the highest income level. It's even worse in areas with the highest levels of essential workers, with a growth rate of over 50%. That compares to just about 18% in areas with the lowest levels of essential workers.
The vast majority are people who, have to choose to work or continue to work even when there's societal restrictions, because we need them to work, for grocery stores being open, for factories being open, for construction being open, and many of those other critical industries.
To make matters worse, Kazitsu says many people who do temporary work will often take shifts even if they have symptoms.
The moment you mention that you are sick, for the safety of the agents, they lay you off the job. You're not sure of whether you can make the rent at the end of the month. You're not sure of the food you're going to eat.
He says he doesn't get sick pay and he doesn't have benefits, which means if he doesn't work, he doesn't get a paycheck. Greg Ross, CBC News, Toronto.
Starting today in Toronto, seniors 70 and older can book their vaccine appointment at 3 of the city-operated mass immunization clinics: the Metro Toronto Convention Centre, Toronto Congress Centre, and Scarborough Town Centre. According to the latest update, 436,443 vaccine doses have been administered so far. The appointments can be booked online or by phone. You can also visit the City of Toronto's website for details. An Ontario doctor is facing a first-degree murder charge, and police are investigating multiple suspicious deaths at the hospital where he worked in Hawkesbury, west of Ottawa. CBC's Olivia Stefanovich reports.
I was very shocked and troubled with that situation because he was my doctor.
As a patient of Dr. Brian Nadler, Sebastian Fournier says he can't reconcile the physician with the accusations.
He was very professional and very attentive to details.
Nadler practiced internal medicine for just over a year at the Hawkesbury and District General Hospital, the main medical centre in eastern Ontario along the Quebec border, halfway between Ottawa and Montreal. The 35-year-old was arrested on Thursday and charged with 1 count of first-degree murder after Ontario Provincial Police responded to a call about a suspicious death at the hospital.
I find it crazy. It's a small town, so I'm not really expecting it.
It's a little bit creepy.
The news is unsettling for many in the tight-knit community. Adding to the anxiety, provincial police say they're looking into a number of other recent suspicious deaths.
It's scary because this is our local hospital.
Provincial police aren't revealing how many potential victims they're investigating or their identities as they wait for the results of forensic testing, but they're urging the public to remain calm.
This is a one-off.
Investigators continue to interview hospital staff and families.
Our heartfelt sympathies go out to not only the families directly impacted by this, but we understand that this is a traumatic experience for everyone in the town of Hawkesbury, and we definitely stand with you.
As for Nadler, he maintains his innocence as he remains in custody awaiting his next court appearance. Olivia Stefanovich, CBC News, Hawkesbury, Ontario.
A community barbecue was held today at Trinity Bellwoods Park for encampment residents and the Encampment Support Network, a gesture meant to show support for people living in the parks. Last week, the city announced a new initiative to get those experiencing homelessness and living in encampments into hotels. Outreach workers say there are many challenges in trying to access services because homeless people must meet strict criteria to qualify. The city says hotel rooms like those at the Novotel are only for people living in priority encampments long term. The city has issued trespass notices to people living in Trinity Bellwoods and other encampment sites. The notices say any tents and belongings found in the parks after 8 a.m. on April 6th may be removed and disposed of by the city. Sophia's here now with our first look at the weather. I mean, a glorious week, but today and Yesterday, a little chilly.
Yeah, you know, typically, Maribel, I'm a pretty positive person, but the cooler temperatures this weekend, even though they're seasonal, after the heat that we've had this week, kind of feels like a cruel early April Fool's joke. I'm not too happy about it. We are seasonal, though, but yeah, feeling pretty chilly. I had to bring out the parka again. A few of you around Ontario did crack the double digits, but for the majority of you, this ended that consecutive stretch of double-digit highs that we enjoyed over the past week. Dry out, though, because the next rainy, blustery system is coming in for a rainy and cloudy Sunday. We will warm up slightly, though, for your Sunday. And then back down to seasonal with a chance for some sunshine, though, for Monday. Clouds continue to move in for the overnight period, and so does that next big rainy system. Pre-dawn hours, it's in store for those of you in southwestern Ontario. Around the breakfast hours is when you'll see it around the GTA. The most persistent rain will be there in the earlier part of the day. It starts to clear into the evening, and that's when the heaviest rain will move in for those of you in eastern Ontario. Around the nation's capital, you could see up to 30 millimeters of rain, so quite a intense system for those of you there around the nation's capital. And then on the wraparound of this system, cooler winds and a little bit of lake enhancement could mean some flurries for the traditional snowbelt regions, even as far south as Barrie and Guelph. For the rest of us, this is a 10 to 20 millimeter story, very blustery as well, 60 to 70 kilometer-an-hour winds. And then in the long range, I'll tell you a little bit about how we dry out. The sun comes back in, and there is a bit of a glimmer of a warm-up.
Okay, so we'll check back with you in a few minutes. Thanks, Sophia.
Welcome.
The future of a Bloor West building isn't clear, as well as the 30-year legacy it has as a graffiti alley in the area. But local artists and scholars say it's a treasured landmark. And as Jessica Ng shows us, they're speaking up against its removal.
This wall is a cultural monument to hip-hop, and hip-hop, it represents a global force.
Greg Meister is an artist and hip-hop documentarian who has been filming this graffiti wall by Keele and Bloor Street West for years. A wall that has its own community following and Instagram page. It's even listed as a site to see on TripAdvisor. Plans are currently in the works to destroy it, which is devastating for Meister.
It speaks to a generation and what's been happening in the world. And if you understand hip-hop history and hip-hop culture, the canvas was the city because the kids weren't given an opportunity to express themselves.
The last of 3 commercial tenants in the building just moved out a week ago after they were told their lease would not be renewed. As for what could go in its place,
we don't have a formal application from that new firm, Mattamy Homes, yet.
This is what a similar project submitted by Kingset Capital last May would have looked like.
The city had some concerns about whether it was too tall and too wide and so on, and that developer sold the property and is now in the...
City Councillor Gord Perks says he has spoken to Mattamy Homes, the current owner.
I have talked to them once and I have a commitment from them that whatever pathway they're taking, we will have a community conversation.
But local artists say that's not enough.
We've been painting the wall for 30 years now. It's a landmark in Toronto, in Canada, in the entire west end of Toronto, and it's pretty sad to hear that it's coming down.
Graffiti artist Mick Michel worked on another mural space that has already started being torn down, this one in North Etobicoke by Metrolinx. She likens the value of the art form to
caveman drawings. We're spending millions and millions of dollars digging up and trying to find them, but yet we're covering up graffiti.
What does gentrification and destruction of these graffiti spaces signal to you?
What happens is development comes in and actually creates simulations of it and drives the very people who created that community feeling, it drives them out.
So far, there is no set timeline for construction for the new development on Bloor. Jessica Ng, CBC News, Toronto.
There is hope that a ship blocking the Suez Canal could soon be freed. It's disrupted global trade with dozens of vessels waiting to pass the waterway. We'll get the latest on the effort to free it coming up. China has retaliated against sanctions Canada has imposed over China's treatment of the Uyghur population in its far west. Human rights groups believe more than 1 million people have been detained this year in what China calls re-education camps. Beijing has imposed sanctions on conservative foreign affairs critic Michael Chong and on the House of Commons Subcommittee on International Human Rights. On Thursday, Beijing issued sanctions against several British MPs. Police say 2 people are dead and 8 injured after multiple shootings in Virginia Beach. The city's police chief says authorities arrived at the first crime scene where there were 8 shooting victims on Friday night. He says shots were later fired a block away where an officer later killed a suspect. Another person was killed in a separate nearby shooting, but police believe that third incident was unrelated to the others. At least 5 people are dead after the collapse of an apartment building in Cairo. It's feared more may be trapped in the rubble. 24 were taken to hospital. Such incidents aren't uncommon in Egypt, especially in poorer neighborhoods. It's not clear yet what caused today's collapse. And China and Iran have signed a 25-year strategic cooperation agreement. The foreign ministers met ahead of the announcement. The deal is believed to include Chinese investment in energy and infrastructure, and Iran said it is counting on more vaccine doses from China to combat the pandemic. It also expressed appreciation for Beijing's support following Donald Trump's abandonment of 2015's nuclear power agreement. For the 5th straight day, a giant shipping container is blocking the Suez Canal, stranding more than 300 vessels. The CBC's Dominic Velitis has the latest.
Efforts to dislodge the Ever Given from the Suez Canal got underway again this afternoon. 14 tugboats are currently involved in the operation. The authorities say they managed to nudge it a little bit last night. Its rudder and propeller are apparently working, but they just don't know when it might be fully freed. The Dutch experts who were brought in to help say it could happen early next week, but only if all goes in their favour. Certainly, strong tides and winds in the area are not helping those salvage efforts. Others, meanwhile, have warned the operation to free it could take quite a long time, possibly weeks, because if the current plan of digging and towing the ship out doesn't work, salvage teams will have to start the process of lightering, that is, transferring the Ever Given's cargo to another vessel or to the banks of the canal to reduce its draft, to make it lighter so it can move again. We're still no closer, by the way, to understanding what caused this huge vessel to get wedged in the way it did. The authorities said today that high winds were not the sole reason, as was originally thought. They think a combination of factors, including possible technical or human error, may have had a part to play. It's worth remembering that around 12% of global trade passes through the Suez Canal. That's about $1 trillion worth of goods every single year. And the blockage has caused a huge traffic jam of more than 300 ships which are waiting to use the canal. It has big financial implications. Indeed, one German insurer thinks it will end up costing global trade up to $10 billion a week until the Ever Given is freed and the canal is fully reopened. Dominic Velitis, CBC News, Bristol, England.
It's a live shot of Windsor for you this evening. Looks sunny now, but rain could be on the way. Coming up, we'll have your weather forecast and a preview of tonight's Earth Hour. More on all that. Stay with us. The Festival of Passover begins tonight. The holiday is celebrated by Jews around the world. This would be the second pandemic-era Passover, meaning many synagogues will be empty or at limited capacity due to COVID-19 restrictions. The City of Toronto is encouraging folks to hold Passover Seder with those within their household only. They're also encouraging those who live alone to have exclusive contact with one other household and connect with loved ones virtually. Well, you're looking live at the Toronto skyline this evening. Still bright out right now, but at 8:30 p.m., the CN Tower will go dark to mark Earth Hour. The global event is held on the last Saturday of March every year. Millions around the world are encouraged to power down lights and electronics for 1 hour. It also reminds me, Sophia, that warmer temperatures are on the way after Earth Hour.
Yeah, I remember past Earth Days and Earth Hours where we were out planting that day and it was quite a bit warmer. And either way, by the candlelight for many of you tonight, a sign of that warming trend to come, and you'll have kind of a little bit of everything in the kitchen sink for this weekend. It's that up and down roller coaster type weekend that March is famous for. The lamb, the lion, you know the deal. We're seasonal and just above for Sunday though with a bit of rain. We dry out and some sunshine, back down to seasonal for your Monday, and then that roller coaster up to April-like temperatures continues for Tuesday. Some of you, like in southwestern Ontario, could see the mid to high teens. For the rest of us, it's a 10 to 20 millimeter type story for the much of Sunday. And then for Monday, we cool down again with that sunshine. We should be about 6-7 degrees this time of year. Enjoy mid-April-like temperatures right across the board for Tuesday. Wednesday, a bit of a change yet again. We have a cold front that will pass through our region, slices through with some showers. And then the real cool down comes for Thursday. Okay, have a look. That is April Fool's Day, the first day of April, and we will be right at the freezing mark, even colder for those of you in the nation's capital, about 2-3 degrees, feeling as low as -10. Now that's the April Fool's Day joke. Abundant sunshine, but not much of a warm up for those of you for Friday, and a bit of a warming trend as you head into the weekend. Actually, the first week of March will be quite nice, really. More mid-April like temperatures and seasonal for this time of year, but a stark reminder that we are still in March. And actually, the rain that we will have tomorrow and that we had to end off this past work week took us from one of the driest Marches on record to actually normal when it comes to average rainfall for March. So the gardens will be happy.
And that'll be fun to start planting again. Thanks, Sophia. Well, biking is on the rise everywhere, and in Sudbury, cyclists have been taking to the streets. As a result, stores are trying to meet the high demand.
But what's happening this year is that there is a bike shortage, and we're seeing a huge backlog when it comes to availability for bikes.
Anderson says instead of being ready for the April influx, bike inventory will come in waves. She says bike availability won't be the same compared to previous years. And she says at Bike Shop Adventure 365, there's already a wait list.
Last year, basically, all the supply for the bike industry as a whole got bought. So there's not a lot left. Going into this year, I mean, combined with the most beautiful spring we've ever really had, we also have a huge shortage in the bike industry. That's why people keep saying bikes are the new toilet paper. It's hilarious. Like, you dropped off that, no one is
Some shops in the area are receiving as few as 4 bikes per week. Shop owners are asking customers to stay in contact with the shops and make sure the owners know you're interested in purchasing. They say just keep being patient. And that's our show for you tonight. Thanks for watching.